2 in the morning, you're asleep in the back of your van. Then, 3 hard knocks on the door. If you spend enough nights on the road, that moment will likely come, and what you say in the next 60 seconds will either end the encounter in 2 minutes or turn it into a 90-minute ordeal that ends with your van being searched, your plans ruined, and in some cases, a citation that follows you for months. The same mistakes show up over and over in van life forums, online communities, and documented overnight parking incidents. Not because van lifers are doing anything wrong, but because nobody told them what not to say before it happened. This video is that conversation. 7 specific things you should never say when law enforcement knocks on your campervan door at 2 a.m. And more importantly, why saying them makes your situation worse even when you're completely innocent. One of these has nothing to do with searches, warrants, or your parking spot. It's something completely automatic, something many van owners say out of pure politeness, and it can change how an officer reads the entire interaction from the first 10 seconds. We'll get to that one. And at the end, I'll tell you something controversial about how the van you choose can actually affect how these stops go before you ever open your mouth. That one surprises people every time. Let's get into it. Mistake number 1. I'm not doing anything wrong. This feels like the most natural thing in the world to say. You're not doing anything wrong. You're sleeping. You're minding your business. So why not just say it? Because the moment you volunteer that phrase, you've shifted the dynamic. You've moved from a neutral interaction into a defensive one. I'm not doing anything wrong signals that you're anticipating suspicion. It's the conversational equivalent of walking past airport security and saying, "I didn't pack anything illegal." True or not, it draws attention. You're introducing suspicion into a conversation that may not have required it. What to say instead? Nothing that isn't answering a direct question. You can be calm, polite, and completely cooperative without volunteering statements. "Good evening, officer," is a complete sentence. It opens the door to a normal human interaction without framing you as someone who feels they need to defend themselves before they've been accused of anything. The baseline rule, and this applies to every item on this list, is that your job is not to explain yourself. Your job is to be calm, non-threatening, and brief. Mistake number 2. I live here. This one carries more legal weight than most van lifers realize. In many U.S. jurisdictions, how you characterize your use of the vehicle as a primary residence versus travel can affect which local ordinances apply, how the officer categorizes the situation, and in some cities, whether the interaction shifts from a standard welfare check toward a different kind of enforcement entirely. Full-timers feel like they're being honest when they say this, and they're not wrong to want to be honest. But there's an important distinction between honesty and volunteering information you weren't asked for. You are not obligated to describe your residential status to an officer who knocked to check if you're okay. The central point here is simple. If you're asked directly whether you live in the van, don't lie. But don't volunteer your residential status when nobody asked. That's not evasion. That's just not creating complications that weren't on the table. This matters most in cities with active enforcement around vehicle habitation. Los Angeles, San Francisco, Denver, Portland have all seen periods of aggressive enforcement in this space. What you say and what framework the officer puts you in can depend heavily on local context. If you're uncertain about the rules where you're parked, that's not an invitation to explain yourself more. It's an invitation to say less. Mistake number 3. I'll explain everything. Nervousness is the enemy of a short police encounter. Someone knocks on your van door at 2 a.m., your adrenaline spikes, and you start talking because silence feels hostile and explanation feels cooperative. It isn't. Cooperative means answering the questions you are asked, clearly and calmly. It does not mean narrating your trip, describing why you chose that spot, explaining your route for the last 2 weeks, or detailing how long you've been traveling. Every piece of information you volunteer beyond what was asked is a thread that can be pulled. That doesn't mean officers are adversarial. Most of these stops are brief wellness checks and nothing more, but more words create more potential for misunderstanding, more follow-up questions, and longer encounters. The van lifers who described their smoothest police interactions use the same language consistently: calm, brief, cooperative. They answered what was asked. Then they stopped. Here's what's coming next. It's the one that people think protects them, but in practice often does the opposite. Mistake number 4. You can't search my van without a warrant. Legally accurate in many situations. In the U.S., the Fourth Amendment protects against unreasonable searches and seizures, but the automobile exception, established in a long line of court decisions, means vehicles have a lower expectation of privacy than homes, and probable cause standards for vehicle searches are treated differently than those for homes. In practice, this area of law is fact-specific and can vary significantly depending on circumstances. Here's the problem. Stating this loudly and confrontationally does not prevent a search. It often escalates an encounter that would have ended in 2 minutes. Officers conducting routine welfare checks don't respond well to legal lectures at 2 a.m. And if an officer has determined they have grounds to search, or believes they do, invoking your rights aggressively does not stop them. It makes you more memorable, and not in a way that helps you. This is not advice to waive your rights. If an officer asks for consent to search your van, a calm, "I don't consent to searches" is a clear, appropriate response. What you're avoiding is the confrontational version, because confrontation does not protect you more than calm clarity and dramatically increases the temperature of the interaction. Know your rights, state them if relevant, state them once, calmly, then stop.
Mistake number 5. I didn't know I couldn't park here. Variations of this show up constantly. I didn't see the sign. I was going to move in the morning. I've parked here before and it's always been fine. Each of these feels like an honest explanation. Each of them is also a problem. I didn't see the sign implies you were looking for one, which implies awareness that there might be a restriction. I've parked here before can establish a pattern of behavior that matters in jurisdictions where repeat violations are treated differently. I was going to move in the morning is a preemptive defense, which works fine in your head and works against you out loud. When asked about your location, confirm the basic facts. Yes, you're parked here. Yes, you're sleeping. That's it. Don't construct a narrative. Narratives invite scrutiny in a way that simple facts don't. Mistake number 6. I'm heading to tomorrow. Your travel itinerary is your business. An officer conducting a parking stop has no need to know where you're going next, who you're meeting, or what campsite you've booked. Sharing that information feels like small talk. It isn't. It's context that can generate follow-up questions you didn't need to answer. Van lifers who've been through multiple encounters note that mentioning a specific destination, a specific person's property, or a timeline for moving creates room for questions that simply wouldn't exist if the answer had been shorter. An officer who learns you're planning to drive across state lines tonight now has a reason to wonder why you're parked here instead of just driving. The encounter gets longer. Answer what was asked. Stop when you've answered it. Your plans are not part of the interaction unless you make them part of it. Mistake number 7. Apologizing for existing. This one is subtle, but it's real, and it's the one that gets retirees and first-timers most often. Some van lifers, particularly newer ones, default into an apologetic mode during police encounters. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cause any trouble. I know this probably looks weird. I'll leave right now if that's easier for you." The politeness itself isn't the problem. Being polite is an asset in these situations. The problem is that apologizing implies you've done something that requires forgiveness. If you're parked legally and sleeping, you haven't. You're an adult in a vehicle. That's not a crime. Compare these two responses to a knock on your door. "I'm so sorry, I hope I didn't cause any trouble. I can move right now if you need me to." Versus, "Good evening, officer. Is there a problem?" The first response positions you as someone hoping to be forgiven for something they probably shouldn't have done. The second positions you as a calm, self-assured adult who's done nothing wrong and wants to understand what the situation is. That distinction changes the tone of everything that follows. And for a retiree who spent 40 years being told not to inconvenience anyone, it can be the hardest mental shift on this list, but it's one of the most important ones. The controversial part, and it involves your van. Here's something the van life industry doesn't talk about, probably because it's uncomfortable. The vehicle you buy can affect the context of these interactions before you say a single word. This isn't a legal claim. There's no statute that says police treat campervans differently from cargo vans, but context and visual perception are real, and they shape how any interaction begins. A well-maintained, clearly recreational campervan, a Winnebago Solus, a Pleasureway Plateau, an Airstream Interstate, reads as what it is, a production RV being used for travel. That visual framing is immediately legible to anyone approaching the vehicle. There's a manufacturer name on the back, there are windows, the proportions are familiar. A DIY cargo van build with blacked-out windows and no markings is visually ambiguous. It might be a contractor's work vehicle, it might be storage, it might be anything. That ambiguity isn't a crime, but it is the starting condition for a different kind of interaction, one where the officer begins without a clear read on what they're approaching. This is not me telling you not to build a stealth van. For some people, the stealth build makes complete sense, but most van life content treats stealth as a pure advantage. The reality is more layered. If you're a retiree, a couple, or a family planning extended travel, particularly in urban environments, the legibility of your vehicle is worth factoring into your purchase decision. It's a variable almost nobody includes in their buying math. Add it. If you're currently choosing between a factory Class B, a professionally converted van, and a stealth DIY build, don't compare only purchase price, fuel economy, floor plan, and maintenance costs. Consider how clearly the vehicle communicates what it is, where you intend to use it, and whether that matches the lifestyle you're actually planning. That's a buying decision. Make it consciously. If you're already full-timing and you've been through encounters like this, you probably recognized a few of these from experience. Mistake number 3 and mistake number 7 are the ones that sting most in hindsight because they felt like the right thing at the time. If you're in the research phase, looking at sprinters, transits, Class B production rigs, trying to figure out whether van life actually works for your life, this video is your preview of what the lifestyle involves beyond the Instagram version. These situations are manageable, but only if you've thought through them before they happen. And if you're a retiree planning to spend significant time on the road, mistake number 2 has the most complexity for full-timers specifically. The residential characterization question is genuinely jurisdiction-dependent, and the stakes of getting it wrong are higher when the van is your primary home. Don't wing it. Know the rules in the specific places you're planning to park. Conclusion. Most police encounters with van lifers are uneventful. Officers are doing wellness checks, confirming the person in the vehicle is okay and moving on. When interactions do escalate, it's often because something got said that created friction where there didn't need to be any. Not because the van lifer did something illegal, because they said something that changed the temperature of the room. The smartest thing you can do is decide in advance what you're going to say. Literally, before you ever park overnight in an unfamiliar area, play the scenario out. Think through the first 3 things you'd say if someone knocked. The people who handle these situations best aren't naturally calmer than you. They just made that decision before the adrenaline hit. Decide in advance. Drop a comment. If you've had a police knock on your van door, what happened? And if you haven't yet, which of these 7 do you think you'd be most tempted to say at the moment? I read every comment on this channel, and this is the one conversation I want to see play out in the thread.